let's talk about the same way you build your financial portfolio. How are you going to start to build your career capital portfolio towards career happiness? Same way. Just like you think about your financial investments, you need to be thinking about, like for me, when I lost my job as a project manager, War on Poverty, I was told like within 2 days I was out of a job. In that situation, you need to be thinking about what is in your emergency fund, what is in your cash, who or what would you tap into if you needed something now? Short-term investments, what's over the next 3 to 5 years of your life? Who and what are you utilizing regularly? Midterm, 3 to 10, what do you need to be investing in? And what's your long-term strategy? Where do you see yourself knowing? And we're going to talk about this the same way with the financial portfolio. It needs to be fluid. And then we're also going to talk about liabilities, deferred income. What are you procrastinating and why? And what are the realistic expenses that can affect your ability to invest in your assets? So it just has that framework. Okay. So you think about your asset allocation, right? You know, people look at their stocks, maybe probably not wanting to look at that recently. Things have been a little bit tough. So within this is how you could do financial. We're going to talk about if you're building your career happiness portfolio. I talk about OPQ, opportunities. This is everything from, are you doing pro bono volunteer work? Are you doing things on the side with other projects? What kind of, are you on the board of an organization? What kind of opportunities are you taking advantage of in your job? Are you doing what I love to call leaning out in your job, stepping up into new leadership roles? Then the P, your professional network. We often think about our professional network as, okay, it's the people we know right away and how are we leveraging this? There's compelling research around what's called consequential strangers, having an open network. There was one network science study that was done that said that people, one of the best predictors of career success, that's not just getting the job, but being successful in your job, is having an open network. And what that means is not just kind of connecting with people that you know that are in your circles, but connecting with people that are disparate, totally different communities, and really enhancing your own knowledge. So how are you continually building your professional network? And what are you doing about your qualifications? You know, a lot of us have already gotten our degrees, right? Well, what's next? Some things are online, courses you can take, things you can take advantage of at work. How are you thinking about your OPQ around your asset allocation? And at the same time, you need to think about risks. The same way you need to understand this for finances, you do need to think about this for your career. Because like just as he says, you've got to imagine everything has a little professional risk. I had to bring in a little dog, cat talking, have a little lighten up. So I encourage people to take some time before they do this to really weigh risk appetite versus risk tolerance. How much do things matter to you? What are you afraid or excited for? How diverse does your portfolio need to be? You know, some people come into DC and want a job in the government because they don't necessarily want their portfolio to be that diverse. They want stability. Other people are coming and they're like, oh, I'm happy to pop from this to that to this. I'm comfortable with that, which sometimes has to do with what's your role in your family. Are you the sole breadwinner? Are you the only person in your family that you are doing this money? Are you supporting a family or supporting others? What keeps you up at night? What gets you excited to wake up? This helps you to start to weigh your tolerance for some of these decisions that you make. So let's go back to this career capital balance sheet. And then let's dig in a little bit more about your assets. Who or what would you tap into if you needed something now? Let's talk about some of this within the context of kind of your assets in this way. So let's dig in and thinking about this around this OPQ, right? So you need to, I would encourage you after this today to think about this. Not everybody's going to put this in a spreadsheet. Not everybody's going to be strategic about this in this way. You have to figure out what works for you. Sometimes it's just thinking about this, right? But thinking about how are you prepared? Like if you got fired today, you know, do this. If you're getting another job, some people here might be in that same situation right now where you actually got laid off recently. There's been a lot of changes. What can you draw on for this? And then as you build into your next job, what's going to be next for you? How do you build this? So Again, speaking, presenting, writing, connections, skills, strengths, expertise. What can you become known for? I often talk to people a lot. You need to know your competition. What's your competitive edge? What is it about you that makes you you, that lights you up? So let's do some examples with this. This might be if you were doing this in this kind of strategic way, filling this out and be like, okay, this is some of the things that I want to do. I want to be a president of a board. I want to get a certain qualification. I want to get, get certified in something. So starting to think about what is realistic, the time frame for this. But then you have to make sure you're asking yourself another question that I just think that people don't ask themselves. What actions do I really want to take? I have all the time where I have clients who will be like, oh yeah, I'm going to do this. A month later, why didn't do it? Probably their energy really wasn't there. Sometimes there's extenuating circumstances, but we tend to put energy into things we really want. So take the time to ask, where do you really want to do this? What do you want to be building? Because remember, career capital is transportable and transferable. It allows you a lot more flexibility. So you need to know where you want to go and where you want to take your time in. So asking yourself of this, what really matters to you? And you might say, okay, I really do want to be on the board, but I can't do it right now. It's not short term. My job is too busy right now. But if this is what I want to do, what are some very specific micro steps? I love that word. It's micro steps, micro shifts. Things don't have to be big. Maybe I need to renew my membership at the organization. Email them to find out, how do people even get on the board? I had a session today with one of our graduate students who was saying to me, well, I'm waiting to call the schools to find out until I have the perfect questions. I was like, there's no perfect question. You just need to reach out and ask, right? You need to gather information. Maybe I need to attend the next event. What can I actually do with this? So take the time to go through these and think about, what are you keeping ready within all of these categories? Then the next thing you have to start to think about is your liabilities. Okay. What are you procrastinating and what can affect you? Because as we all know, this is our reality, right? You get to pick the third. There's never, I was reading an interesting article the other day, and it said, it's not that we all have too much to do, it's that we just don't allocate our time according to what we want. And we often feel like we don't have control over that all the time. It's more of a time allocation, because you're going to have to make decisions about things to figure out where you want to spend your time and your energy. It's impossible to do it all. So let's talk first about the liabilities, and let's dig into deferred income and thinking about, what are you procrastinating? And then you want to think about, what do you want to take action on? So let's see if everyone can just do their hand share. Can everybody find where that, to be able to do the reactions, to do a raise the hand? If I want you to raise your hand, I'm going to give you two different scenarios that you're going to say. If you said, I will email 5 people next week to have informational calls, versus the next one is going to be, will I email 5 people next week? Which one do you think you're more likely to do? So first I'll say, if you said, I will email 5 people next week for informational calls, which of you think that that's the way to go? Okay, then let me hear if I said, will I email 5 people? The people who said, will I, is anyone willing to share why they think it's will I? Anyone willing to unmute?
Just unmute yourself if you want to share.
It's okay if not.
Sure. I think I would be more willing to do it because I am like manifesting it almost, like I'm speaking it into existence. So if I say it out loud, it makes it more real for me.
Ah, for the will I. Anybody else for the will I? So how about anybody for the I will? Why would you say I will?
And Denise, I apologize. That was for the I will.
Ah, okay, so I will. So is there anybody that's the will I? So guess what it is? It's actually will I. There's an amazing researcher, Peter Goldwitzer at NYU School of Management, has done stuff around implement. I love the reactions. And I love seeing, I have several alum from my university on this call, so that makes me very happy. People, extraordinary people. So what does will I force you to do? Who wants to answer that? If I ask will I, what does that force you to do? Anyone want to try to answer that one? I say will I email people? What does it make me do? One, it makes me question. Remember what I talked about, whether or not your energy is really there? Two, it makes me begin to look at what are the obstacles in my way and how do I plan for them? Because we all say, I will lose weight, I will exercise. And, you know, when they say, what is that? All those, you know, New Year's resolutions go out, right? And it's interesting is this guy, Peter Goldwitzer, is actually married to one of my favorite positive psychology researchers, Gabrielle Oettinger, who's written about this, about rethinking positive thinking. And she has this phrase, and I think it's a silly sounding phrase, but it's called WHOOP, about how to actually do things in positive psychology, which is what is your wish and what is the outcome? But then what are the obstacles and how do you plan for the obstacles? So if you don't in advance think about, like you might say, well, I'm going to email 5 people next week. And you're like, oh my God, I have a deadline for work. Why family visiting? Or I don't actually know how to access this on LinkedIn, or that you begin to recognize what are the barriers that get in the way of you procrastinating things. And you're much more likely then to go ahead and do it. Because here's the thing, our brains are wired for efficiency first and foremost. Our brains are wired to save energy. Our brains like congruence. So if in advance of something that we want to do, we think about in advance, what are the problems and what will I do if that comes up? Your brain has congruence and is more likely to follow through. So when you think about what you're procrastinating, and you need to think about what will you take action on, right? And to ask yourself that. The other piece that Peter Goldwitzer talks about seems simple, yet so few of us do it, is the when and where. So he says, when you ask this, will I, when you plan for these, you know, if this obstacle comes up, then I will do this. It's these implementation intentions. The third piece, he says, the when and the where. You put it on your calendar. I will, even if it's in your house, like I will go to my office and I will put this on my calendar and do this. I'm in the process right now of relaunching my website. I'm working with somebody. On the weekends, I have 2-year-old children and they nap, and I have it on my calendar. I know that they nap at the time, doesn't matter. I had it on my calendar and I would say to my husband, it came up, my girls are napping. I'm going to be in the office and I'm going to be working on reworking my language. So it was like, it came up as a reminder. Research shows you're so much more likely to do this. So again, we want to we know that there's things that are going to be liabilities for genuine reasons, but are things that we want to kind of hack our brain, what I call career happiness hacks, to make it easier for you and more likely to follow through.